Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to my home mix room slash studio slash office. I don't really know what to call it. When I think of the word studio, I'm thinking like control room, tracking room, all that stuff. This is more of, a mix room. This is where I mix. This is also where I run my online business. So I'm gonna show you around, show you everything about this room, the treatment, the gear, all that stuff. So let's get into it. Okay, so this is my mix position right here, kind of at the, I guess you call it the front wall from like walking in the door. It's like right in front of you. So if we just turn around here, my mix position, here's the left wall beside me. Here's the back wall. And then there's the other wall there. And then we're back in the mix position. The room is almost a square. It's, I think, a little bit wider side to side than it is front to back. But it's a pretty good size. So even though it's not ideal dimensions, I guess, for a mixed room, it's fairly big, and I'm mixing on small monitors, so it's not like I have a ton of room problems, and I'll take you through the treatment that I've done as well. So right behind my mix position here, I've got, let's see how many, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 panels up on the wall here. So they kind of alternate. The ones right behind the speakers are 4 inches thick, so they'll kind of trap more of the bass frequencies, and then the others on the sides here are just 2 inches thick. And I found this to be enough actually for a while. That's kind of all I had, and it was totally fine. I had no problems with translation or hearing things. So that's kind of like all I found was needed there. I don't have a low end problem at all. In fact, because I'm mixing on NS10s, I don't have a sub. I really don't have to worry about those super low frequencies anyways when I'm mixing. I'll tell you more about that when I go to my gear here and show you my speakers and headphones and stuff. So that's why I didn't decide to straddle the corners here. It's more work to get them up. It messes up the drywall a lot more when you're doing the corners versus this. So, or at least it does for me, because I suck at hanging them up and I have to do it 3 times. But that's what I got along that back wall. Now also beside my mix position on either side, so if we're here where my mix position is, if I'm sitting facing the computer, turn to my left, we've got a panel here, and then the other way we've got one right there as well. So that's basically like kind of where my ears are. So again, I didn't have those for a while, didn't find a problem. I put them up, I didn't really hear any difference, but I had a bunch of extra panels, so I just decided to throw them up there and make use of them. So again, this whole back wall, and then 2 to the side. Then on the back wall, let me back up here, where I sit here in my leather chair in the morning and have my coffee and read and all that stuff, do my morning routine. Right behind there, I did put a bass trap across the corner, just because, again, I don't think I needed it. I didn't have it for a while, but I had a bunch of extra panels, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna put it where you would normally put it. And again, I didn't hear any difference, but it's there anyway. Nothing on this back wall here. It's just, again, it's not necessary. There's enough space. It's almost, I'd say, from my speakers to that back wall, probably 15 feet. And I'm not mixing that loud. If I was tracking in a space like this, where I'd be using bigger monitors, like when I would track bands, I like to track pretty loud. I like to have the energy. Then, in that case, I would definitely have bass traps in every corner. I would just have a lot more treatment in here, because I'd be exciting the room more with that volume. But I'm not doing that here. So I really only have that one in the corner there. And then on the back wall, I showed you this panel already. That's kind of right beside my ear. And then there's another one on that wall too. So used up all the panels. Kind of, obviously it serves its purpose, especially these ones behind my speakers. Those make the biggest difference. And then the other ones, they just kind of make my space look cooler, honestly. Here in the back corner, I'm sitting in this nice, comfy leather chair here. This is where I spend a lot of mornings. Try to wake up early before the family, come and sit here, have some coffee, just silent time. I don't look at my phone or anything when I wake up until I kind of get through that routine. So I sit here, read some scripture, spend some time in prayer, maybe reading some other books. This is, got my bookshelf here. I love to read. I'm always got at least 1 or 2 books on the go. So these are just a bunch of my books, and kind of helps with the sound too. It's almost like a natural diffuser of sorts, right? Having this whole shelf of books and kind of irregular shapes and everything behind me on the back wall. Speaking of books and whatnot, I have this iPad Pro that I absolutely love. You see I have the pencil attached there. I use this thing for taking all my notes. So I use a notebook app, I think it's called GoodNotes. And so it recognizes your handwriting. So I've got literally hundreds and hundreds of pages, whether it's just journals or all my business ideas, really anything that's in my mind that I want to get down on paper, I write down on the iPad there. And then that way I can search it. I can literally type in and search for different words. If I'm like, I remember I had that idea and I wrote this down, where was that? So rather than flipping through actual pages in a physical notebook, trying to remember where it was, I can literally just search and it recognizes my handwriting and I can find exactly where that idea, where that note was. So that is super handy. And you kind of still get the benefit of what it does to your brain when you're actually physically writing with the pen and paper, which is more beneficial than just typing things. So it's kind of the best of both worlds there. So little tip there, just one of my favorite pieces of gear. Also on my bookshelf here, got a couple of the pedals that I've kept throughout the years, just a few, but these are my favorites. This is the SansAmp Bass Driver DI. I've done a video on that before, how I like to use that and the go-to settings and whatnot. So I keep that guy for tracking bass. This Micropog here from Electro Harmonix, this basically adds a lower and an upper octave to whatever you're playing. I was introduced to this pedal when I was interning at a Toronto studio and John Fields was there producing with the Jonas Brothers, and this was like the only guitar pedal that he brought. He brought it to Toronto from LA and he used it on a few lead lines, and it's pretty powerful. I've used it on a bunch of records. If you listen to any of my work, I think definitely some Silverstein records, Dead and Divine. If you hear kind of like higher lead lines where it sounds like it's doubled and like with an octave, it probably is this pedal. And also those really heavy, like sludgy, like dong, 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 dong. There's a song on the Dead and Divine record for sure like that, and a bunch of others actually. And that's where I've used the lower octave and blended it in, and it sounds good on bass too, as well as guitar. So I really love that pedal. And the other pedal is, of course, classic for us heavy rock guys and metal guys, the Maxon 808. Love this thing. And you can see I've got little pieces of tape where my go-to settings are. Tone knob broke off, but it's at about 10, 11 o'clock. Overdrive, I just leave at 0. I don't actually put gain on this, or I don't put like distortion on this. And then the balance, usually, if I need to drive the amp harder, we'll put it up like this. Maybe if I'm using a JCM 800 or something, but if it's like a 5150, it's usually down more like that around 11 o'clock. So those are the 3 pedals here. I'm not like a huge pedal guy. I usually just track fairly simply in, just guitar to 808, or if you are using, let's say, an octave pedal just for an effect in a part, but otherwise just the 808 pedal into the amp, mic'd up into the DAW. Okay, let's make our way to what I'm sure you're interested in, which is my actual mixing rig here. So iMac from 2017. I don't know the exact specs on it. Maybe I'll throw up a little screenshot of it here in the video. Pretty standard 27-inch 2017 iMac, still running strong. I rarely have any problems running fairly big sessions with it in Pro Tools. Right here, I've got the Avid Artist Mix controller. I struggled to get this thing to work for a while. It connected, then it didn't connect. I had all these issues. I got a little tip to, if you look under my desk, I've got this little Ethernet switch. For some reason, putting that in between the Artist Mix and the Mac solved the problems, and now it connects just fine. Works great. I've also used a PreSonus fader port in the past with just one fader when this thing wasn't working. I gotta have at least one fader, but having 8 on here is super nice. My interface is just an Apogee Duet, just mixing here. So it's got 2 ins, 2 outs for the monitors. It's really all I need. I don't have any outboard gear. I was keeping my distressor because I just love that thing for so long, but I finally let it go because I just wasn't using it anymore. There's some distressor emulations in the box. The Slate one I think sounds like pretty much exactly like it. So if I get sent a track to mix where it hasn't been compressed on the way in, I'll run it through that first and then do my usual mixing stuff. So got rid of the distressor, so no outboard gear anymore. We just got the PreSonus Central Station monitor controller here. It's where I plug in my headphones. If I did want to plug in a different set of speakers there, I could just use that. That keeps it pretty simple. I actually don't really necessarily need that anymore, but just in case I want to add any other speakers in, that just keeps it really simple. It's got a mono button on it, so that's helpful as well. Over here on this side is just your standard power conditioner. There's just kind of a generic brand here. And this is the SM7B. You see me using this to host all my live streams, record all my YouTube videos where I'm walking through mix sessions and stuff like that. Awesome mic, not only my favorite mic for tracking rock vocals, but also turns out to be great for podcast videos and stuff like that. So let's talk speakers. I love these things. These are NS10Ms. People always ask me about, what's what's the revision, when were they made, all that stuff. I don't know, I have no idea. I wanted NS10s. I searched on Kijiji, I think, found a pair that were for sale. They were pretty cheap, bought a power amp, and been mixing on them ever since. I used to have Yamaha HS8s. They were good for tracking because I could crank it up loud. They had some good low end, but always struggled with getting my mixes to translate on them. Once I got used to mixing on NS10s, for reasons I've discussed in other videos that I can link up here, my mixes just start translating way, way, way better. So that's all I mix on now. And I have them up on these little Orlex foam pads. For low end though, since these guys really you can't hear that much below about 100 hertz. So to check my low end, I actually don't spend that much time in the mix focusing on the frequencies below 100. Like I'm talking maybe 2 to 5 minutes in total messing around with those frequencies. And when I do, I throw on these headphones. These are Audio-Technica M50s. You know, again, I wouldn't take that too seriously. They're good headphones. They're pretty popular. Basically, these are just the first studio headphones that I ever bought about 15 years ago, and I've just kept them. I'm just used to them. So it's not necessarily because I tried a bunch and I think these are the best and you need to get these. You don't need to feel like that. These are just good, solid studio headphones. They go down low enough. They let me hear the sub range in an isolated way. So my room is not messing up my low end. I'm just checking those low frequencies on the headphones, throw them on for a minute or two, check that low end, reference it, take them off, go back to mixing on the NS10s. I gotta show you my keyboard tray under here. So I have the Apple trackpad, which I really like just kind of doing regular computer work stuff on that thing. But if I'm mixing, I actually put that over there and I bring over my Kensington trackball. If I'm doing any audio work, I'm using this thing. I'm so used to it in Pro Tools. I'm much faster with it. I don't like using the trackpad for editing and really doing anything in Pro Tools. I've just spent so many thousands of hours with that Kensington trackball. It's just like second nature, it's muscle memory, so I gotta use that thing when I'm mixing, when I'm doing any audio work. If I'm traveling to another studio to do anything, I always bring that trackball as well. Last thing to show you on the desk here, I got this old Korg Nano Key. So it's just a super small 2-octave MIDI keyboard. Just connects USB, and I don't use it a ton, but it's super handy for in my old studio when I was tracking, let's say vocals, or really if we wanted to add any layer of like synth tracks or virtual instruments, I would crack that thing out. And then also tracking vocals, I would have like a little piano instrument there so it could kind of help play out melodies for singers or find harmonies. These days it would just be for things like programming MIDI instruments, especially programming MIDI drums. I find it so much easier to actually just record in real time and like play the kick and snare on the keyboard and then layer it like that. So much faster than just clicking around with a mouse to program MIDI. So little handy tool there as well. On the side of my desk here, tucked underneath the rack here, I've got this Little Labs Red Eye. So this is a combo reamp box and DI box. So I don't use the reamp function. I would use that to reamp guitars in the studio. It's also just a clean, passive DI box that I've used for my guitar DI for a long time. So right now I just have it wired up to the second input of my Duet. So my SM7B goes into input 1. This is plugged into input 2, mic level, and then I just have it plugged in. So if I want to plug a guitar in or my bass, I just plug it in there and we're good to go. So I just kind of keep that sitting there. That keeps it really simple. I've had a lot of questions over the years. People see my NS10s in the videos, they say, what power amp are you using? And the answer is this guy right here, the Yamaha P2500S. And honestly, I did some research. There seemed to be tons of debate about what to get. But anyways, I settled on this thing, found it used. Again, it wasn't too expensive. It's clean, it does the job. I've used it ever since I got my NS10s. I've never compared anything else, at least in my studio. I've heard, you know, the classic Bryston power amp with NS10 combo in bigger studios. You just need a good, solid, clean power amp that's gonna give you enough power for these speakers. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Right on top of that is this Lacy 4 terabyte hard drive that I have, and it's got all my audio projects on there. And I also back it all up. So I back up my iMac and the external drive, anything connected to it, using a software called Backblaze, and every single night it backs up to the cloud. So I used to have to burn things onto DVDs or have multiple hard drives. Now this is big enough to have all my current projects and then some on this 4 terabyte drive, and then it also backs up to the cloud. I am not really the right guy to talk to about video stuff. I don't know that much about cameras and video gear, so I just ask people who know. I've got an awesome video editor who edits all my videos. His name's Alex. You can check out his YouTube channel. But this is, I figured some of you guys might ask or want to know what I use for the video side. So this is just a Canon 80D and stock lens on it. This little adapter on the end here fits on a little teleprompter. It's called a Parrot teleprompter, and you just slide your iPhone in there with the script. So I use that for not a whole lot. I don't really use that for YouTube stuff, but any longer videos that I want to have scripted out and make sure I say certain things, I'll throw that on. And then I've got a Rode wireless lav mic set up here. So that's the camera that you see me using in any more kind of fancier videos, and I've been using it more on the YouTube videos. Recently got these softbox lights, I just got off Amazon. They work pretty well. More clear, crisp picture from the Canon there. I almost bought another lens, and then Alex told me, no, get some better lights instead. So got 2 of those guys, and I got some other little LED lights here. These little guys that I used to use, but they're pretty harsh, kind of cold light. These are actually turning out to be a lot better. For the screen capture parts where I'm walking you through Pro Tools sessions, I use a software called ScreenFlow. Got a lot of questions about that, so ScreenFlow, check it out. Super easy, really great software for making on-screen tutorials. Well, I'm not sure what else to show you. I think I've got it all. Actually, I'll show you inside this little closet here. It's pretty much a mess, but I've got a ton of guitar strings in here. All of my cables and digital cables, analog cables, all that stuff is all in there. Tons of gauges of strings. I actually got hooked up a number of years ago. These are actually pretty old, but I think they're still sealed. They're okay. I've got hundreds of guitar strings in there for different gauges, for different tunings, which is super helpful, especially when I had those in the studio when bands would come in, because they would often have the wrong string gauges for whatever tuning they were playing in. And so super helpful to just open a drawer and be like, okay, we need a 56 gauge on the top, or we need a 60 because you're tuning down low, or whatever, and we could just change strings often, and I wouldn't have to bother bands to go and buy strings. So something to think about if you know a band or an artist who has an endorsement with a string company, ask them to get you some strings, because they can give it to you free or super cheap. And either way, it might be worth ordering some bulk strings for those maybe thicker, heavier strings that bands never seem to be able to get. Like bands that played super low tunings, I would get them to use like a 60 or a 72 gauge on the bottom string. And man, it's hard to find those in the local music stores that were around me. So having these in the studio really helped. Show you the guitars that I have in here. First, this is just kind of a standard acoustic guitar. It's got a pickup in it, Artmu 3. Sounds pretty good, but honestly, I've had this for a while. I don't really use it that often because I've got this other little guy here. This is a Taylor. It's one of those kind of miniature guitars. It's like what you see Ed Sheeran play. It's not his model, but it's kind of like the same size and feel. It's just a lot smaller. It's really nice to play. Super light, small neck, and I thought it'd be good to have around the house. Also for my kids once they're getting older, but still maybe too small to handle the big acoustic, maybe they can get started on this, I thought. So just a fun little acoustic guitar to play. I kind of use this a lot if I'm just sitting around the house and just kind of want to relax and jam a little bit. The bass guitar I have here is actually a Squier jazz bass, and I got this, man, a long time ago off a friend, I think for about $200, and it was really just to be a backup in the studio for when a band came in, and let's say they didn't even have a bass player, so they don't have a bass to bring in, or the bass that they do bring in is garbage and we can't really set it up or get a good tone out of it. This has just been a faithful, steady, good sounding bass. And even though it's Squier, it plays nicely, sounds good. It's made it onto a bunch of records. I think we used it on the Dead and Divine record, but yeah, it's made it onto a bunch of records when it was needed. I've played it on the recent course I made with the Digital Production Blueprint, where I tracked guitar and bass and used programmed drums. This was the bass I played on it. Sounded great, pretty good for tuning and setup. And Squier and Fender, they can be hit or miss. I once had a Squier Telecaster that I absolutely loved. I did a little bit of simple work on it to help it feel a little bit better and play nicer. And it sounded good, and it was a joy to play. And I thought, man, I really like this Tele. I'm gonna sell the Squier and upgrade to an American Fender Tele. And so I did that, and I really didn't like the Fender Tele at all. It just didn't have a nice feel. So they can be hit or miss, but this one is a hit, and it served me well for many years just as a backup in the studio. And this here is the guitar I've had for a long time. It's not my first guitar. I think it was the second guitar I ever got. My first was an Epiphone Les Paul, and then I upgraded to a Gibson. I got this when I was probably like 14 or something like that, saved up all my money. It's a Gibson Les Paul Special, and I don't know if they make these anymore. I don't see a lot of them out there. But it's got classic Les Paul shape and everything. It's a lot thinner than a typical Les Paul Standard or Studio, so it's a lot lighter, and the neck is also a little bit thinner, so it's a little bit nicer to play than a typical Les Paul. It just feels less clunky. It's really nice. It sounds great. It's got some nice humbuckers in it. This has been used on a ton of records that I did in my studio for, I mean, countless local bands and bands like, you know, Silverstein and the like. I'm sure we picked this up and used it a bunch. Again, I played it on that digital production blueprint course here, just plugged straight into my iMac. It sounded great. It's got a little bit of a crack in the headstock, unfortunately. I don't know if that happened from just playing live a bunch with it, or yeah, I really don't know. But again, it's still holding up. This has been my favorite guitar. I love this guitar. I wouldn't say I love playing regular Les Paul, but these ones, I just absolutely love it. I'll probably keep this one forever. Well, I don't know if there's anything else to show you. I hope you enjoyed this little look inside my home mix room / home office here. This is where I do everything. So hope you enjoyed this. Hope it gives you some ideas of what to do in your space. Check out the other video where I kind of walked through how I took this from just like, it was just a really standard, boring looking bedroom in the house here. And so I recently painted it, put the panels up, put this cool feature wall in the back here and all that stuff. So check out that video if you want to see the process and kind of the room makeover. These are just some frames from records that I've worked on. And this poem, people have asked in other videos, it's a poem called If by Rudyard Kipling. Just Google it, it's a good poem. I like having it up on the wall there to remind me. That's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully it maybe inspires you or encourages you that I feel like I can get the best mixes of my life in just a simple space like this with pretty minimal room treatment. But I think what it takes is just being very selective and purposeful about what you're working with and the gear that you choose to keep or not keep, and the setups that work and don't work. Find what works for your room. Don't obsess over it. Get the necessary treatment and the necessary gear, but you don't have to go overboard or feel like you need to constantly be trying new things. This setup has really served me well for 5, 6, maybe 7 years in various rooms. This is the third home mixed room that I've had with basically the same setup, and it translates everywhere. I don't have to like relearn things. It just works. So again, thank you guys for watching. Leave me a comment below and let me know any questions you have if there's something that I forgot to cover in here. But otherwise, thanks. Talk to you later.